It's crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and the Steelers and Browns are headed for their rematch. We'll break down key aspects to this game right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your hosts, Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers, Jeff Lloyd of Locked On Browns. And as always, you can find this show and both of our shows on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of the Monday through Friday episodes on both of the teams that we cover. Because we bring you your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And as always, Crossover Thursdays are sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5 only on Prize Picks. Jeff, it feels like we just did this, man. It's kind of crazy. We were literally here 2 weeks ago doing the same show before a Thursday night showdown, but now these teams are facing each other again. The Browns won the first one. The Steelers bounced back with a win over the Bengals. The Browns lost a Monday Night Football. And I think one thing, even with the loss, one thing that rings true, and I think a lot of people are looking at is Jameis Winston looks like a good quarterback for the Browns in the way that they want to play football right now. What's been your assessment of him in these games?
Well, first things first, I think what you're looking at with this, Chris, is when you talk about Jameis Winston, he automatically just brought back a likability factor to this team. And so many fans that were on the fence. And look, Chris, everybody knows fandom. You want to know what? If Deshaun Watson was playing great, nobody would have cared. All that other stuff, it would have just gotten swept to the side. He wasn't, plain and simple. So therefore, it gives just more reasons for stuff to get piled on. Jameis wears his heart on his sleeve. Probably says more than he should. No question about it. But I know you've heard me talk about it. And I've talked about this with the Kevin Stefanski-led offense, the entire regime he's here. It gets to times where they are not challenging anything beyond 10 yards of line of scrimmage. And number one, you got to almost be perfection to win that way, because you are asking, basically for a completion percentage in the 80s to succeed like that when you're not going for chunk plays. Yeah. When they do start to open it up and go vertically, at times they did it with Baker Mayfield. That was a strong suit of Jacoby Brissett when he was quarterback for this team. We just basically saw this same thing a year ago at this time with Joe Flacco. You can open it up deep, and then guess what? It opens up everything else. It's, with Jameis, and I've said it, look, he'll throw you into a game, he'll throw you out of a game. And, you saw both examples of that, certainly on Monday night. But it's also shown for, Amari Cooper was blocking the developmental path, maybe not the developmental path of everybody, but certainly blocking a major investment they had made towards Jerry Jeudy. Now, Jerry Jeudy in de facto number one, and everybody with the number one wide receiver combinations. Just because somebody is a number one wide receiver on one team does not mean you compare him to Justin Jefferson. Technically, there are 32 wide receiver ones in the NFL. Okay.
Correct.
So, but they all don't necessarily classify into the elite category. Okay. So with that, but Jeudy has just found his comfort zone. And everybody tried to make it sound like it was poster board. You're going to go back to Denver and face your old teammates. I want to kick their ass. No, everybody wants to go beat up on their old teammates. You know what? Jerry Jeudy backed it up. Not everybody else necessarily did. But, to go for where he is, I believe it's he's first overall in receiving yards. I think it's the last 6 weeks. He was now fifth overall. Cedric Tillman was on a nice developmental growth. We'll see where that is going to be. Tillman has had the concussion that he suffered in the Thursday night game. Has not been back to anything since. We'll see where we're at with that. Elijah Moore, 100-yard game. Now, this is really interesting because Elijah Moore started to have the same developmental growth last season as well. Contract year. Now, Browns have a lot of draft choices. They're going to have a lot of options this offseason. Are they going to maybe say, if we can get Elijah in here one more year, maybe that's one less thing that is a top need for us. But it's just been exciting to see. Obviously you want them to tighten it up. And look, we talk all the time, and this goes on in the NFL where, guys flame out early. Okay. And now we see the rebirth of a Sam Darnold. Maybe we're seeing the rebirth of a Jameis Winston. But at the pace he's going interception wise, it's certainly probably not sustainable. Joe Flacco was doing the same thing last year. It was a high interception total, back-to-back pick sixes in the playoff game. And before you knew it, it was over. But it's been a fun ride. When you're this time of year, you have so many teams just, like the New York Giants not even giving an effort. But you get inspired efforts from the Carolina Panthers on Sunday. So you know what the Panthers saw? They saw Bryce Young starting to step up, start playing much better, which maybe changes their offseason view of him. But also, they still secure the same draft position because they ended up playing well enough, but didn't win. Browns, same thing, well enough, but didn't win. Still keeping your name. Fans still want to be watching the games this time of year. Look, we ain't got nothing to do. It's cold. It's nasty outside. There ain't no plan B. Chris knows how nasty and cold this weather is right now. There's no plan B right now. You want to fire up the fireplace, cook some food, have a couple of drinks, watch your team play. And Jameis Winston has given that factor. Thursday night football, Chris, prime example. Basically, the crew was kind of hoping the Browns won because Russ is just like a corporate CEO, and that's who would have come to the post game, where you get Jameis, who, Jameis kind of like a Gronk mentality, where you don't know what he's going to say, and he's just super excited and geeked up and all that stuff. And that's kind of the way it went. But it's been really a change for this team, and it's certainly put a lot of life into this team, where this team was certainly on life support. And for all the expectations that people thought this team was going to have, and basically met none of them, but it's a whole new ball game right now, the way this team is running.
I don't care who you are. You can't help but kind of just chuckle a little bit when Jameis Winston says, I'm praying to the Lord to deliver me from pick sixes.
I got news for you. The entire Northeast Ohio is right along with them. They're going to go start burning candles at the churches. They're going to set up in the grottos and stuff.
But I think that's part of what's so likable about Jameis, right? Like
a star that he can admit what his faults are. So many
right.
said, well, when we get to the film, you'll see it wasn't me. That type of stuff.
No, exactly. But the Steelers have to be prepared for him this time around. Jameis Winston it's not just that he has a big arm or anything. He avoided their pass rush several times when guys like Larry Ogunjobi had a clear path right to him, and he outran them. And that's something the Steelers have to be better at. The Steelers defense, though, getting back Alex Highsmith this week. Mike Tomlin put it to bed. It's not a question anymore. He's back. And now they'll finally have their full gamut of Watt, Highsmith, Herbig, and Preston Smith, who they traded for. And last week, when they at least got when they got some things going last week, they were able to finally move TJ Watt around more in the defense, and that's going to be a big factor in this game because the Browns did a great job of making sure every time TJ Watt lined up on the left side of the defense, right side of the offense, there was an extra man there, 2 extra men there. They said, we may not be triple teaming you, but we're making sure you have to go through 3 bodies to get to Jameis Winston, and he's going to roll the other way or get the ball out fast so that you don't impact the game. The Steelers, I think this time around, they have to switch that up if they have any hope of disrupting what the Browns want to do on offense, what Kevin Stefanski tries to do. And that could be a key matchup, is the chess match as far as where Watt goes, how the Browns adjust to it, and how they also take on guys like Highsmith, Herbig, and Cam Hayward, who seems to have just continues to drink from the fountain of youth in Pittsburgh.
I swear to God, I saw the other day when they said he was 35. I mean, are we moving is he like an old car where we're rolling back the miles? Because I could have sworn this guy's been 35 for the better part of the 2020s. But the key here, honestly, and look, we can say what we want about TJ Watt. It's always been Alex Highsmith in Browns games. He's always basically given almost such a much of a certifiable big impact as TJ Watt. That is the one that's probably going to be difficult, for the Browns, because, look, any great pass rusher is great solo. Basically, when Batman has Robin, vice versa, all of a sudden your game picks up a little bit more because there's only so many bodies on the field. And look, somebody's going to face one-on-ones. Jermaine Afridi, I'm assuming, will still be the left tackle. I don't even know why we are still even talking about Jedrick Wills, or we have people listing him in, the Browns are down a starter this week. And I look and I'm like, Jedrick, really? We're even considering him a starter at this point? Maybe we got to do what you got to do to get headlines, I guess. But look, the offensive line has actually played pretty well. The issue with sacks and Jameis is, Jameis has got a great arm, but everything else about Jameis is slow. His release is slow. His delivery is slow. He's never been fast. That's never happened. I actually saw a video of him in a high school all-star game he stole home. I swear to God, Chris, if you set the clock, it was like 9 seconds by the time he left third base and hit home plate. He wasn't fast as a teenager. But that's certainly obviously going to be the key. I think the other thing that you're starting to see with the Browns is, Mims had that 98-yard touchdown. Browns came right back and went 70 yards. They're taking a punch now. Weeks before something like that happened, it was like, all right, we'll turn it off, fold the tent. That's it. This team, it's just not going to fight. But look, it's Steeler week. It's always one of the more marked games of the year. The Browns don't have many feathers they could stick in their cap this year. But if the Pittsburgh Steelers were to go on to win the AFC North and somehow the Browns could say, wow, well, we beat them twice. Nobody else was able to get any job done. It's Steeler week, man. You get excited for it. We're into December, elements, all that good stuff. It's, it should be a really, really fun one on Sunday. And I'm only, with Jim Nance and, Romo and everybody on the call, I'm actually surprised it's still a 1:00 game. I didn't know those guys did 1:00 games.
Right? That's kind of crazy, right? I think it's certainly going to be. We'll get into the Steelers side of things and what they're doing to prepare for this week next here on Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Chris Carter, Jeff Lloyd, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. FanDuel is the place that you need to place all your bets, whether it's on the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, college sports, and so much more. Conference championships are coming up. Put your money down on where you're going to go. And hey, if you're a Steelers or a Browns fan, here's your lines going into Thursday right now as far as where everything is on FanDuel for Steelers hosting the Browns for a 1 p.m. kickoff. The Steelers right now are a 6.5-point favorite that moved up from 5.5 at the start of the week. The Steelers money line currently sits at -320. That's been eking up a little bit higher and higher. The Browns money line is now at +260 with the over-under creeping up to 44.5 points. It was 41.5 points to start the weeks. Looks like they're starting to believe in both of these offenses. Where will you put your money on Steelers Steelers hosting the Browns this Sunday? Do so on FanDuel.com. And you can get started right now on FanDuel.com with $150 in bonus bets to new customers when you place your first bet of $5 or more today. That's $150 of free bets to new customers if you just hit on your first bet of $5 or more, only on FanDuel.com. Download the app today or visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. We're also brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through some mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Well, our sponsor, Hillsdale College, offers more than 40 free online courses, including Constitution 101, Intro to Free Market Economics, Great American Story, Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and so much more. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper into readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Back here on Crossover Thursday, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers, Jeff Lloyd of Locked On Browns. Jeff, I'm going to talk about the Steelers real quick here because they showed something last week that I don't think a lot of people thought they could do. And I know that the Bengals are one of the worst defenses, if not the worst defense in the NFL, but the Steelers put up points and put up points fast. They scored 37 on offense. They had a pick. They had a fumble return for a touchdown on defense. But Russell Wilson looked smooth in this game. And now, all of a sudden, the Steelers, and I don't think anyone expected anyone to say this anytime soon, the Steelers have the 10th best scoring offense in the NFL right now. And I was saying all offseason, look, if they just get to 16, they're great. They're gravy. It's awesome. This is perfect. And here they are, a top 10 scoring offense, ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs, ahead of the Houston Texans. And now this is a much more balanced team than even I thought it would be. And I thought this would be a good team this year. But to me, it's that balance of having an offense that can put up points, possess the football, keep the defense fresh, while having that defense that can get after the quarterback, that can stuff the run. And right now, they are the #1 time of possession offense in the NFL, while also being a top 10 scoring offense. And to me, this defense is still the key to this team being great. But this offense is giving the Steelers defense more leeway. And I think that is something we have not been able to say about a Steelers team since maybe like 2018, 2017. And even in those years, the defenses weren't that good.
Well, the thing that honestly scares you about this is, the defense, like you said, has been good. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to start playing with a lead and you bring Alex Highsmith back. It certainly, sets up well for them. It is, it's interesting just because, Russ, who was always an accurate passer, all of a sudden now here he is at this age. All of a sudden it's like, like Russ is playing with the mid to late 80s Raiders, just tossing the pill everywhere. And it's just got, certainly this weird feel to it. but it is certainly working. The run game could be better, but if the defense is good and you're throwing it like it is, I think the run game is more than okay with where it's at. The development of all the young offensive linemen, which has been a key story note for this Steelers team the entire season. You just threw a whole bunch of guys at it, and honestly, you hope maybe one works, but it seems collectively all of them are kind of getting it done, which is a real, certainly, modified coup for the way it's working out for Pittsburgh. And look, things just keep, work. Pittsburgh goes in every week, does their business. Baltimore seems to be obviously fading away from the pack. The hype about Cincinnati and this resurgence that I think everybody just thought was eventually going to come, it's just not. And for a division that everybody thought for a second year in a row was going to be, a juggernaut, it's looking not like the case. And I remember when we all talked in the summer, when everybody was thinking that, again, the AFC North was going to be like that. The problem I had is it's really difficult to get 4 teams in one division to be that good 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh certainly obviously has risen, from where they were last year. Everybody else is just, trying to figure out, basically where 2024 is gone.
Yeah, that's kind of the part here, right? Is everyone it's kind of just surviving the war of attrition, because everyone's losing people too. I think that's kind of what the Steelers have been, and again, it's been the surgence of this offense. Like the Steelers defense gave up I think it was 38 points. They gave up 31 points to the Bengals offense in the past several years. If you did that, it was over, because the Steelers offense wasn't putting up anything up to compete with that. And also, like, there's been games where the Steelers offense has possessed the football when they've played great defense to not give the other team that extra second or third possession in the fourth quarter that allows them to eventually crack, get the final crack at the end. Like, aha, we got in. And so that's been the thing about this team that I think is making this dangerous. It's not necessarily just the defense anymore, but it's also not necessarily just the offense now. These both units are playing off each other. It's complementary football, and I think they've achieved that in a way that's kind of unique to this division right now. Now, again, I think the Browns with Jameis Winston might have something here. I want to revisit this real quick, Jeff. What would it take for the Browns to legitimately consider keeping Jameis Winston around, and him? Does he have any chance to maybe be the starter for the Browns next year, or is that just Deshaun Watson's job because of his contract?
Well, Cleveland Browns Daily, which is obviously a show that is directly in influence with the team. Nathan Zagar, who's also the radio color guy, now he's one of the hosts of that show. Now, normally it's really difficult when you work for the team and you're doing shows. Obviously, there's certain things you can speak about and certain things you don't normally speak about. Right. So it is a great show. A lot of player interviews, things of that nature. But maybe you don't necessarily get something that you might from a beat writer who works for, a separate entity as opposed to working directly for the team. But yesterday, they actually said that they are pretty positive that there's no way it's Deshaun Watson next year, which you don't usually get that stuff, from somebody working directly with the organization.
Right.
And it was very pro Jameis. I think there's a lot of talk, that where is Jameis going to be? Is the market going to be friendly to him? It certainly could be, but I don't know of any other team that's going to tell Jameis, you'll be my starter in camp and it's your job to lose. The Browns, that is probably something they are going to be okay with, and probably are going to have to work hard enough to understand that there's going to be a significant, plan B on this team, because, look, he's already thrown 2-3 interception games in his starts with this team. One against the Chargers, certainly Monday night against the Denver Broncos. And if you're in it, those are things that are going to be really close to curtailing what your season could ultimately be. But I think they like the player. I think they like the energy. I think they like the fact that all other 52 guys can't take their eyes off him, and just the way he is, the way he carries himself. I would love for the Browns to start working on that now, but I do believe, Jameis and his camp would be smart to at least, explore the open market. Deshaun's going to get his money. How the rest of it works out, I have no idea. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't care. I have seen so many other quarterbacks succeed in this system, play well, put up great numbers, keep the team in games, where it's almost felt like when something went right when Deshaun Watson was on the field, it was kind of like why or how. It wasn't like the expectation, and everything was just so forced. It's not that way with Jameis out there. He's just out there playing ball, knows where guys should be. Sometimes the ball's inaccurate, yes, but you get a lot of wows, with Jameis Winston out there. And, leadership has been a big thing during the Kevin Stefanski regime, and how they want their players to carry themselves. And Jameis Winston will put it all on himself, and he will certainly stand there for his teammates. And I think that's gone a long way into building him and Berea to finally open up their eyes to, basically admit they made the most egregious of mistakes. And you're always going to have your name associated to it. But the worst thing about a bad decision is sticking with a bad decision.
Absolutely. I want to talk about key matchups in this game. We'll do that next here on Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Chris Carter, Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Steelers, Locked On Browns. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by Mint Mobile. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. Well, with Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says it's $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. So bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with a high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Customer your wireless to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan, only speed slower than above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Back here on Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers, Jeff Lloyd of Locked On Browns. Jeff, Myles Garrett was the story of the game last time. Well, a story of the game. There were several stories, but he had 3 sacks in the last game. And the Steelers in the second half appeared to have adjusted to at least minimize him in the second half, but the damage was done in the first with what he was able to do there. The Steelers, though, this past week, took on Trey Hendrickson, the leading sack man in the NFL, and they were able to pretty much stonewall him. Talk about how the Browns move around Myles Garrett to force you where, because that's something the Steelers are only really tapping into the surface of TJ Watt, but that seems like it's been a staple of Myles Garrett's game for years now.
It was early in his career. And then there were times where it wasn't, but I think this was something that started last year, and Jim Schwartz was just like, and granted in mind at the time you had Zadarius Smith, had Okoronkwo. So you had capable players where you can say, well, I'm going to take the 320-pound defensive lineman off the field and, I'll use my, absolute, chess piece like a queen. You just try to, it's again, like you talked about earlier, because you're just trying to play mind games. You know what I'm saying? You get so accustomed, and when teams play TJ Watt, you get so accustomed to looking over at the right tackle, looking at the situation. Is somebody going to be there to help my right tackle? But now you got to get all your calls off. You got to look at the secondary. You got to identify coverage. And then meanwhile, it's like, well, wait a minute, 90's not standing where 90 is normally standing. And there was that highlight week 1 of 2023 where Myles was standing above the center from the Cincinnati Bengals, pretending to do the crossover dribble. And you literally, the guard's tapping him to snap the ball, but it was also kind of like, yeah, I don't know what's about to happen here, but good luck, bro. And the thing is, it was always a thing you do in football when things, guys are young. You take a guy, let him do something else. Why? You want to keep him more engaged. You want to keep more excited. When you start telling players, well, look, this should be a better advantage for you. This should be, and you keep the guys, the juices flowing, the excitement to it. So it's certainly been a part of it. They're lacking a little bit right now. Zadarius Smith being moved on was the right move, but it certainly, didn't help this team. But you are looking at a player like Elijah McGuire that you're trying to get a developmental path on. Okoronkwo is a good player, but he's a role pass rusher. They brought in 2 pass rushers late last week in James Houston and Cameron Thomas, both 24 years old, both picks in the 2022 draft. They're trying to get eyes on them. But you just take your best player. And look, if it leads to a timeout, if it leads to a false start, if it doesn't even lead to a sack or a pressure, it had some form of impact. And look, defense coordinators, what do they love to do? Mess with offensive coordinators. Offensive coordinators, what do they want to do? They want to confuse defensive coordinators. It's just the way football should be played.
It is, and I think that's what both sides are going to try to do in this way.
And especially when you're talking about teams that know each other this well and have just faced each other within the last 14, 15 days.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the whole thing here, is that these teams, they know that he sort of like one thing I thought was really cool about the first episode of Hard Knocks that came out. You got to be in all the team meeting rooms, and when the Steelers are preparing for the Bengals, you see them talking about, like, Mike Hilton saying they're going to throw to George Pickens, they're going to throw a bad pass to him, and then they're going to throw it to him again. The Steelers are like, we got to do this to Joe Burrow. They're doing that about each other every single week, because whereas they do that about other teams, it's different when you know a team because you play them all the time, and you have to study them all year long, every year, to kind of prepare for them. So that's where I think it's going to get really interesting on both sides, is that the Browns are going to move around Myles Garrett. The Steelers started to move around TJ Watt. As I've been talking about all year long, I think it's something that's been very important for the Steelers to do, to free him up, as teams are sending triple teams, they're doing everything to his side. So move him around even just a little bit. It worked against the Giants. They didn't do it after that once Alex Highsmith got hurt. Then this past week they brought it back, and all of a sudden he has a multi-sack game. That has to be a factor in this game, I think, again, because Kevin Stefanski is too smart of an offensive-minded head coach to allow the Steelers just to put him on one side and that just be it. But to your point, Highsmith being back, he's also been a game wrecker for the Steelers. We'll see where that plays out. We talked about a lot about these defensive fronts. Where's somewhere else that you're looking right now, Jeff, that's a key matchup for the Browns in this game?
Well, Ross Jackson, we love you, so we'll make sure we get our 3 in here, right? You got to clean it up. You can't be throwing 3 interceptions. Look, you throw the ball almost 60 times. You understand there's going to be some mistakes, but 3 interceptions per game is completely unsustainable in this league. So turnovers is a huge one. Now, the Browns, they've been taking a couple of punches and punching back. Well, Pittsburgh is probably going to be looking to punch back here. You know what I'm saying? They went into that Thursday night game, certainly did not want to lose, certainly did not want to take that L. So you got to be ready to go fight. The Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Browns-Steelers games are usually pretty obvious. They're usually pretty tight in Cleveland, and they usually don't go very well in Pittsburgh. That is usually the way that this rivalry has gone for, even as the Browns have started to come back. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, I need some. If I just get 1 week, can I get some semblance of a run game? Look, Nick Chubb is out there. You can see he's not Nick Chubb. Eventually, hopefully, he returns to, Nick Chubb. He's good enough to be out there. He's not Nick Chubb. Jerome Ford looks better. How do you tell Nick Chubb you're going to give Jerome Ford? But you got to get some semblance. A, it's going to shorten the game. B, it's going to prevent Jameis Winston from having the ball, throw the ball 60 times. It's going to rest your defense. You've got to find some way to be able to, matriculate 4 yards per carry or more. I mean, and look, I understand, but you got to be able to commit 20 carries, if not more, because you're having some success. They really need this because, look, with Jameis, the more he throws it, the greater the opportunity and greater their percentage is going to be for some mistakes. So you got to do everything to kind of manufacture the way your team currently sits. And one thing that would truly help this team in all facets is if they could find some success in the running game.
I think that's the big thing, and that's the Steelers try to take away every week. It's about stuffing the run. It's about stuffing the run. And Mike Tomlin prioritized that. Heck, last week against Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, one thing you saw in Hard Knocks, he was talking about, we got to stop Chase Brown. We can't let that guy get going. And that's going to be the emphasis every single week for the Steelers. And look, even though Nick Chubb, I think, averaged less than 3 yards per carry, what did he do in that game, Jeff? He got 2 red zone touchdowns for the Steelers for the Browns in that short distance. That was a difference maker. Jameis Winston, though he played well, he didn't throw a single touchdown. And when he just got them into the red zone and Nick Chubb pushed the way in, that's what the Steelers have to avoid letting happen in this one, is making sure that they don't allow the Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford, even in short distance, key money down situations. What were the Browns? 5 of 5 on 4th downs in that game? They cannot allow those to happen, even if they are 4th and 2s and 4th and 1s. You got to be able to win those spots. Cam Hayward needs to be a difference maker. Watt needs to be a difference maker. Everyone, Patrick Queen, they all need to pitch in. And this is going to be, I think, another big game between these two teams. We won't give you our predictions because that's coming on our Friday episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Jeff, thanks so much for joining me here on Crossover Thursdays. Let people know I can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Well, and actually, just one last thing to your fourth down thing. Remember, Justin Fields, Mohurst blew up the pulling guard. Justin Fields didn't know what to do, so he took the ball the right side on a fourth and yards, and it was big momentum thing at the time. Look, we appreciate you all. You guys, look, again, Locked On doesn't exist without the people who listen to it. So of course, Locked On Browns, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcasts. We're slowing, as far as putting stuff out on the socials. It's always a weird time, through the countries or whatever, and maybe sports isn't on everybody's top priority right now, but everybody who's here for us, again, it's that time of the year where you start to give thanks and you start to realize what helps you get through your world and your day, and you guys are certainly that for all of us here at the Locked On Podcast Network. It's Browns, it's Steelers. Records get thrown out the window. As a kid, when you played in high school, your coach tells you, I don't care if we only win one game this year. We do not lose to our rivals. Well, the point is you do not want to lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers or to the Cleveland Browns. We'll see how it goes on Sunday.
Absolutely. He's Jeff Lloyd of Locked On Browns. I'm Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers. You can follow me on all my socials, Twitter, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, all the places, at Carter Critiques. It's all simple to get those. And you can find this show, just like you find Jeff's show, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all of the daily Monday through Friday episodes for both of us. You can also read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. You want to see a film study on what Russell Wilson's doing right in the decision-making? That published just yesterday in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We both got Friday shows coming up, so tune in back for them as we get you ready for Steelers Browns this weekend. Keep it here on the Locked On Podcast Network.